Welcome to Road to Recovery.
Hello and welcome to Road to Recovery with experienced attorney Sagi Shaked. My name is Kevin Rosenquist and I'm hosting today, and we're going to talk about compensation. We're going to explain it all with, of course, Sagi. Good to see you.
Hey, Kevin. Good seeing you as well.
So what types of compensation are available to truck accident victims?
Yeah, compensation in trucking accidents can vary, right? It depends on different factors, what type of crash this was, who's at fault, what are the injuries, what type of injuries, the long-lasting nature of the injuries. Is there insurance? Of course, you never find out if there's insurance at the trial. No one tells you. We find out before. Well, let's look at the different types of compensation. So number one that you would see starts off almost in every case is medical bills. If you incurred medical bills, you would be entitled to recover the medical bills that you incurred. So that's called past medical bills or medical bills in the past. Then there is future medical bills. So if you're going to have medical bills in the future, that doesn't mean you can go in and say, oh, I'm going to have medical bills in the future. I want you to pay $10 million in medical bills in the future. It doesn't work like that. You need doctors to talk about that it's going to be reasonably certain that you're going to experience these types of treatments in the future. And then you would have a doctor talking about how much it would cost. And then you have an economist putting down what that means in today's numbers. So that's medical bills in the past and medical bills in the future. We then look at lost wages. Some people can't go back to work or have missed certain time from work, so they're entitled to their lost wages. And then we got to look into the future. Remember, being part of an attorney, you have to be some sort of forensic. You got to look into the future. Do they have a loss of future earning capacity? So let me give you an example. A person gets injured and they suffered a brain injury, or let's do it even easier. They suffer a hand injury and it's a surgeon. And now the surgeon can't operate anymore because her hand doesn't work anymore the same way. And now she can't operate anymore. She's going to have a loss of earning capacity claim. And that needs to be looked at moving forward all the way into the future. And if they're a younger doctor, say in their early 30s, and they would have had another 35 years or 30 years of work life, they're going to look at multiply how much that person would have made per year with some annual increases times their future. So that would be loss of future earning capacity. You then look at so those are economics, right? Those are economics, easy numbers to figure out. We get an expert. The expert tells us it's X or Y. We know what it is because medical bills in the past, it's going to be an easy number. Whatever the number is, it's the number.
Sure.
Future medical bills, there may be a fight on that as to does the person need the treatment or not in the future. There's always going to be a fight on that. Same thing with lost wages. Pretty simple to figure out. You were making $100 a day. You missed 1,000 days, you multiply 100 times 1,000, that's your number. Future loss of earning capacity, that's a different story. Sometimes it's easy, like I told you with the surgeon, and then sometimes it's a little bit more difficult. So that's economics. Now let's talk about the non-economics. Those are things that you really can't put a number on, right? There's not a specific formula that you can use, or I know there's websites that they claim to have the formula. There is no formula because when you're going to trial, you have to explain to the jury why they should give what they're giving. And everybody has a different way of doing it. So your non-economics would be your pain. There's mental pain. There's physical pain. Two different things. There's mental suffering and physical suffering. Two different things. Then there is mental anguish, and there is this inconvenience, the inconvenience that this crash has put the person through, from going to doctors to, the inconvenience of, having their leg broken and being in a cast. There's that. There's disfigurement, if you were disfigured. And you can get this in the past and in the future. And then some people have, so not everyone's the same. Some people have a aggravation of a pre-existing condition. So let's say you had a bad back, and a lot of people have bad backs, and you get into a crash. The insurance company can't say, oh, we're not paying you anything because you already had a bad back. We don't care if we made it worse. That's not the law. That's not fair, right? If you had a bad back and your injury got worse, or your bad back got worse, and you can prove it, then you're entitled to an aggravation of a pre-existing condition compensation. So those are, in a nutshell, when we look at the overall, we're looking at economics and non-economics. And that's kind of the difference between the two.
In your surgeon example, if that surgeon moves into, once they're healed up, they can't perform surgery anymore because they have this injury, but they move into an administrative role. Is there something that generally happens where if you were able to make up some of that income, then the payouts stop?
Yeah. So I don't know if it would stop. So basically, let's use the surgeon example. Surgeon was making, we're just going to use a nice round number of $100,000. They're probably making more than that, but let's use $100,000. You would hope, right? With the way inflation's going today.
Yeah, right.
So, and then the prices of everything have gone up like crazy. So the surgeon's making $100,000, and that's for doing surgeries. Right. But now they can't do surgeries anymore, but they can do an administrative job. And that administrative job pays them $60,000 a year. So, and it'll increase every year a little bit, just like surgery would increase every year. So they would say, the insurance company would come in and say, well, you can still work in an administrative capacity. So we're going to allocate $60,000 a year, and we're only going to pay you that $40,000 a year for the rest of your life, work life, and any increases. We're not going to pay you what a surgeon would get. We're going to pay you what a surgeon would get minus the administrative, or in your case, the administrative employee or doctor would get. Does that make sense? Did I explain myself?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Because I mean, you could double dip, I guess, if you found another $100,000 a year job, then all of a sudden you're like, oh, hey, this is sweet. Now I'm making $200,000.
I would do that. I mean, we had a case where there was a hematologist, a blood doctor, and basically the hematologist suffered a really bad brain injury. And this is not someone you want working on anywhere near your blood. Right. Or analyzing anything that you need to get analyzed, because his brain just unfortunately was not working properly. He was in a bad wreck with a truck, and the brain just wasn't working properly. And so he got full compensation because he wouldn't even be able to do an administrative job. So he was getting his full compensation that he was making before, and then we looked into the future. He had another 28 years, so we were able to get that for him as well. It depends on the severity of the injury. So if you had a surgeon who's got a bad brain injury and they can't operate anymore, and maybe they can't work even in the administrative level, right, they may get their full compensation. It really depends. It's not limited also to surgeons. It could be, again, a construction worker or someone like my dad who's a mechanic, who was a mechanic his whole life. It really depends on their job.
Yeah. I mean, podcasters,
There you go.
My voice got to have the good looks,
Exactly. Well, now with AI, maybe we can get someone to do your voice and, that kind of stuff.
Wait a minute. Sagi, this interview's over.
Oh, we got to be careful with the AI.
Are there caps on the compensation that a truck accident victim can receive?
It depends on the state, right? Every state is different. So we'll talk about Florida, for example. In Florida, if you're suing, let's say we talked about vicarious responsibility or liability. If you are the employer, you're responsible for your employee, there are no caps. There is a cap in the auto setting. As the owner, if you let someone borrow your car and they weren't negligently entrusting them, someone borrowed your car and they take it for a drive and they weren't drunk and they weren't, high or anything like that, and they caused the crash, there would be a cap as to the owner. The driver would have no caps. And what we mean by a cap is a certain amount of money that you can recover and never pass that number. You're capped at that number. So generally, I would say for most Florida cases, there is no cap. The owner of the vehicle, there may be a cap against the owner. It'll depend on the situations. So, I can give you an example if you want of what a situation
I like examples.
Okay. So let's say you, Kevin, you let John borrow your car. John gets into a crash and you're in Florida, right? And again, John wasn't drunk at the time. There's nothing that's crazy. John has a valid license. He just made a mistake and caused a crash. You, as the owner, would only be subject to, it's a lot of money, the cap, $100,000 in non-economics. That's $100,000 for pain, suffering, inconvenience, aggravation of a pre-existing condition, mental anguish, disfigurement. That's what in the past and in the future, that's $100,000. And then also $500,000 for the economics. So $500,000 for a combination of medical bills in the past and the future, lost wages in the past and future wages in the future. So that's the economic. Economic, $500,000, non-economic, $100,000. But the driver, John, would be on the hook for the entire amount. There is no cap against the driver in that example.
Okay, that makes sense. How do insurance companies approach compensation for truck accident claims that might differ from how they would approach it for regular, auto accidents?
Yeah, and that's a really good question. And the reason I say that is insurance companies, they know who your lawyer is. They know everything about the lawyer. And the reason why, I'll tell you this, they know they can take advantage of certain lawyers. And what I mean by that is they can offer lower money because they know the lawyers don't have the experience. They know the lawyers don't know what really the case value is. And I can tell you this, why? Because I used to be a defense lawyer. And as soon as a case came in, we would do our homework. We knew everything. So you have to write to the insurance company as soon as the case comes in, a budget. What's this case going to cost? And then after you do the budget, you have to write to them a breakdown of the entire case. But one section of that breakdown deals with who is the lawyer on the other side. And there is, and I know, because again, I would do this homework, we would have to do our homework. We would research the lawyer, look up the lawyer, do research on other verdicts this lawyer or whether he had or she had. We would do the verdict research to determine, oh, this isn't a lawyer that tries cases. They won't go to bat. They won't go the distance. We know we can take advantage of them. Based on that, then you come to your assessment on what the value of the case is. So the lawyer handling the case has a huge impact on the case. If you think you can go to just any lawyer and you think you're going to get fair justice, you're not going to get fair compensation. Because again, as a defense lawyer, we did our research on every lawyer. We know, at least when I was doing defense, and it's the same now because a lot of my friends are defense lawyers, they know everything about you. They know what kind of cases you have. They have metrics on every case. They know how much you're settling your average case for. And so there's a big difference when you hear about results. Certain lawyers just don't get big results, or they think they're getting big results on a case that, they're getting $1 million when they should get $12 million. It's a big difference. So that's how they evaluate cases. They're looking at the case, but they're also looking at the lawyer. So be careful who you hire.
Analytics, right? It's just like in sports and all sorts of different places. Analytics they make a lot of decisions.
Yeah, analytics is key. Sort of like we can go to football. You can have an amazing quarterback, or you can just have a third or fourth string quarterback who may not be good. And that quarterback's just not going to deliver you to the promised land.
Yeah, for sure. So what are the typical steps involved in filing for and receiving compensation in truck accident cases?
So first things first, you get into the truck accident. So the typical steps will be like this. There's a crash. Usually the person goes to the hospital. Now you got to get a lawyer. So the lawyer's got to get out there. You got to get signed up with the lawyer. And then the lawyer, hopefully, I'll just talk about us because I don't know about every lawyer, but we have a team in place with experts. We're immediately going to go down there and get that truck preserved. Get those logbooks preserved, get that truck preserved, get the logbooks preserved, get the maintenance records preserved. We have a preservation letter that we send to the insurance company. We have a letter that we send to the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, and that's the administration that administers all trucking companies. If you got a DOT license or a motor carrier license, you're being regulated by that administration. And so we want to know everything that they have on file. We want to get the black box data recorder. That's in every vehicle now. There's a data recorder. We want to find out. A lot of trucking companies have video cameras internal in the vehicle, so you can see the cab, meaning you see the driver, but you also see what's going on outward. We need to preserve that as well, or that mysteriously gets destroyed, especially if it's not favorable for the trucking company.
Yep.
So the process is you hire a lawyer gets all over it, should be all over it with their team, investigators, accident reconstruction experts, photographers, human factors experts, trucking experts, cell phone data experts. Preserve those cell phones. Those are important. There's data points in those cell phones that can help corroborate or what the trucking company is saying or not corroborate what they're saying. And then it shows that they're lying. So get that. That's one. So one typical process is hire your lawyer. Now, when you're talking about compensation, it really depends on the case because sometimes cases take a little bit longer. Some cases cannot be settled without filing a lawsuit. It depends on the type of case. And so, insurance companies try to bully people during the pre-suit process, meaning before a lawsuit's filed. They'll try to, they dangle some money in front of you, and some lawyers will just take the money and they sell out their clients, and that's not right. You want to get fair compensation for your clients. So you want to get the max amount of money you can get. And sometimes that means going to trial. And so you need to do the research on your lawyer, make sure you have a board certified lawyer so you get full compensation. So again, the process will really depend on the injuries, how the crash occurred, which insurance company is on the other side, who are the lawyers on the other side. Some lawyers make life difficult for the plaintiff's lawyers, and then the defense lawyers end up regretting it later on because they cost their client a lot more money. It really depends. So it's real. I'm giving you a lawyerly answer, I know, and everybody wants
You're
like I know. I want to give you I wish there was a specific answer. Every case settles within 12 months, but that's not true. It just doesn't happen. Yeah.
Yeah, I think most people know that. That's tough. I have a lot of friends who are starting to get those dash cams in their cars. Do you find those are hugely helpful in your line of work?
Yeah, the dash cam is instrumental in a lot of cases. And a lot of times it can be instrumental to getting punitive damages. So those are a huge component to cases. So the dash cam is a great tool for everybody because, look, if the truck driver and trucking company is not at fault, the dash cam, a video doesn't lie unless they're playing with the video. Hopefully they don't do that. But if you have the true version of the video won't lie. And at least that'll eliminate some of the issues in the case. And that's why they have those dash cams, because they don't want to pay for claims they shouldn't have to pay. And that's rightfully so.
Sure. Understood. And the rest of us we can help ourselves by having one in our own cars.
Ideally, if everyone starts using a dash cam, it'll hopefully make everyone drive safer, but also it'll help keep people accountable because they say different things when there's no camera. Right. And then sometimes people say stuff and they didn't realize there was a camera. I'll give you an example. It wasn't a dash cam, but it was a crash that occurred at an intersection. The defendant was making a U-turn and my client was going straight on a motorcycle. And they hit basically at the intersection. So as the person was turning, didn't complete the turn, the motorcycle slammed into him. And we got our investigators out there right away, went to the scene, and there was a building, there was a law firm there, and they had cameras. So we were able to ask the law firm to download the video from that crash. And sure enough, it was a pretty good depiction of how the crash occurred. Now, when we took the defendant's deposition, he had a different story of how the crash occurred. He basically said he completed the entire U-turn and kept driving straight for about 50 feet, and then the crash occurred. I'm like, are you really telling us this is what happened? And he goes, yes. And I go, are you sure your memory's not impacted? And he goes, of course it wasn't impacted. And then when we showed the video at mediation, that case settled, and it settled for a lot of money, rightfully so, because they clearly were lying. And if we didn't have video, we would have a disputed case as to how that crash occurred. But thankfully, video does make a difference. So if you can get the video, get it. And it doesn't necessarily have to be dash cam. It could be from the street cam. It could be from a gas station, from a bank, from a law firm, from whoever's on that street that potentially recorded that crash. I have a case right now where there was a person sitting on their balcony and they just happened to be videotaping the street and they caught it. They caught a crash. So that was interesting. So you can get cameras from anywhere. You just got to have to think outside the box a little bit.
Yeah. Videos everywhere these days. So yeah, for sure. All right. Well, thanks for joining us on this episode of Road to Recovery with experienced attorney Sagi Shaked. If you want to get in touch with Sagi, his website is shakedlaw.com, and be sure to like and subscribe our channel and stay up to date on all things trucking accidents, car accidents, and everything else in Florida. Hey, Sagi, always great to see you. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Kevin.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.